Welcome to the Church Answers podcast. My name is Jess Rayner. I'm here with my dad, Thom Rayner, and we're going to be talking about today 7 ways you can develop thicker skin in ministry. And Dad, as I was thinking about this topic today, I was thinking about growing up with 2 older brothers.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
I want to say that developed some thicker skin for me.
I think it developed thicker skin because your mother was always getting onto you boys about being cruel to one another. And
Mhm.
I kind of enjoyed the banter going around. Art was always the short one. I can't remember what yours was, but I just remember the banter about the short one.
Yeah, it's just the baby. That was often
Oh,
the jab at me.
the shiny penny would be another one, was another jab at you.
Yeah, my
And,
little
and
quirks. They would throw down that I'm the youngest, that I'm the baby. I get called the crybaby a lot, things like that. Yeah, I remember that. I remember it, but I was very quick to throw it back at them, and it came a point where I just would remind them of their life decisions that I would watch them do. So I didn't really have to find a way to criticize them. I just reminded them of things they did.
you had information.
I did. I had a good vantage point, being in the younger one. So there is something about being the firstborn and learning. As the youngest, you get to watch all the mistakes that the firstborn did and make sure you don't repeat them. Maybe that's why parenting gets a little bit easier too with more kids. I don't know.
Hey, you never hit a mailbox.
Yeah. So you learn. You
Your
get a
older
little bit
brother just
sneakier
seemed
too.
to seek them out in his car.
That's right. Anyway, I think that played probably a major part in me learning to have thicker skin, being the young one of the family and being receiving end of a lot of criticism early on. But we're going to be talking about how you can develop thicker skin in ministry, being able to withstand some criticisms that come your way. But before we jump into it, we do want to thank our sponsor for this podcast. If you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, you will know that we always thank Cheney Associates. They are one of our partners. They are the accounting firm for the church. And so if you have any accounting needs, bookkeeping needs, finance needs, all those words that have to do with money and stewardship
Money,
in your
money.
church, go and reach out to Cheney and Associates. Just give them a quick call. They are there so you can lead your church and let them handle the numbers. And they are there to take things off your plate, to give you more time back into ministry, and help you manage the church finance as well. So
And I want to add this to our hurrah for Cheney and Associates.
mhm,
Set up a call with them.
sure, yeah,
No obligation. Listen. Not certainly they'll talk to you about what Cheney can do for you, but listen to what they can do for the church. You're going to be
right,
surprised
yep,
positively.
yep.
Just listen to it.
A quick call could be very positively impactful for your church. Go to cheneyassociates.com/church answers, and get on a call. See what they can do for you. But today we're talking about 7 ways you can develop thicker skin in ministry. And this is a topic that's important. It's a topic that I kind of wish we didn't have to talk about.
We got to talk about it.
But we got to talk about it because the reality is, if you are um, in ministry, especially if you're in leadership, uh, period, you're gonna receive criticism. I think it was Steve Jobs that said, "If you want to go make everyone happy, go
So
sell ice
ice
cream."
cream.
I
That's it.
think that I think that's true. Is it? I guess I don't know. There's other things you could sell, but balloons. I don't know. The principle remains. Most people like ice cream, but if you want to make everyone happy, go sell ice cream. But if you're going to be in a leadership role, you're going to receive criticism. So we're going to walk through 7 ways that you can develop thicker skin in ministry. Here's our first one. Don't take most of the criticisms personally. Most of them are really not about you or your character. Walk us through this one.
Well, I fail this one a lot.
Yeah.
I used to fail it more as a pastor. When I was dean of Southern Seminary, since I wasn't in the number 1 seat, it was not nearly as difficult as
Mhm.
being a pastor and then being CEO of Lifeway. But I do take criticisms personally too much of the time.
Right.
I wish I could just let it roll off of me, but
Mhm.
it does not. But there's kind of a subcategory in here, Jess. Most of us in ministry have a spouse, and sometimes it is more painful for the spouse when the pastor is criticized than it is for the pastor
Right.
at the criticism. And so that's another thing into itself. Your mother was an outlier. If I got criticized, it was basically, oh, so what? Get over it. It's no big deal. I'm seriously, and in a firm, not in any belittling type of way. It's just this is life. But most of us, or most who are in ministry who have a spouse, it's going to be just as painful, if not more so, for them.
Yeah.
And, then you have to make decisions. What do you tell them? What you don't tell them? It's a whole different story.
Yeah. So the idea of don't take most of the criticisms personally. You said it's just more difficult for you. So what are some ways that over the years that you've learned not to do that? For me, it depends on what the criticism is. I don't naturally take it personal. I think my first instinct is not to take it personally. But it sounds like yours, more your first instinct is to take it personally. But over the years, obviously, I've seen you go through lots of criticism over the years, just crazy stuff, off the wall stuff. How do you think you've been able to do that over the course of all the years of ministry that you're going to go, okay, I can't take this one personally?
There's a phrase you mentioned in there, over the years of ministry. Over time,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the other side of it. And most things that I thought were some of the most painful personal criticisms that I've ever received in my life, and I will not survive, I can't even recall them today.
Hmm.
So I just get that perspective. Whether this is personal or not, and it's probably not, 1 year from now, I'm going to forget all about it. 6 months from now, I'm going to forget all about it. Probably 3 or 4 months, I'm going to forget all about it. And then you look at all the cumulative criticisms I've received directly, social media, blog. You just go through the list of the rainer biters that were out there. I really can't recall most of them.
Wow.
And so the perspective is, okay, they don't like me today, but they'll forget me tomorrow.
I want to. I think you just said the term "rainer biters." Is that
Yeah.
what? I don't think I've ever heard you say that before. That's a new one. Always.
Well, there are different kinds of critics. Ones that just try to take a piece of your leg and just gnaw it off completely.
Okay.
And the others are like chihuahuas.
Okay.
And they're just nipping at you all the
Ankle
time.
biters. Okay. Okay. That's
the rainer biters.
That's an interesting phrase. But what I hear you saying then, so someone's listening to this podcast and thinking, yeah, I tend to do this. I tend to take criticism quite personally. What you're saying is take a step back and just remember that this will pass. It's going to fade away. Probably feels a lot bigger than what it is. Probably feels like it's going to last a lot longer than what it is. Now, no doubt there are situations that they do extend, they can be big. So I'm not minimizing every situation, but the reality is that most instances of criticism are going to pass. And there's going to be another side to this.
And another reason you really shouldn't take most of them personally is most people criticize leaders because they don't like direction or decision, not because they don't like the leader.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they identify that with the leader and say, I don't like that person because, and then they identify with the decision or direction. But the reality of it is, if you're in leadership, like Steve Jobs said, you're going to make decisions. You have
Right.
to make decisions. And not everybody's going to like the decision. Guess what? If everybody likes the decision, you're not leading.
Yeah.
You're pacifying.
I can't remember who's told me over the years. I don't know if this came from you. Maybe it came from Ed Stetzer when I was underneath him. There's a sense that when you're leading, you're going to have 10% that's always going to support you no matter what. 80% that's going to be sitting in the middle that's just going, sounds good, and going to have a mixture. And there's always 10% that are always going to be mad at you. And
Yep.
and there was a phrase, I can't remember who said it, but if at least 10% of people aren't always mad at you, you may not actually be leading.
That's true. That is true. And I don't know if the percentages are accurate. The principle definitely is accurate.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a reality too. Just as you lead, as you make decisions, as you get people out of their comfort zones, they're going to potentially say criticism, and you have to understand that most of them are not really about you or your character. So that was our first one. We got 7 we're covering. The first one was this: don't take most of the criticisms personally. Obviously, if it's a very personal criticism, we're talking about just general criticism. These aren't, this doesn't cover every single instance, but mostly they're not about you. So try not to take them personally. The second thing we're going to look at is how do you develop thicker skin? How do you handle things when you hear criticism? It's to pray for the critic. Pray for the critic. You receive criticism from someone. You're saying your first response is to go pray for them.
I'm saying my first response should be
Should be. Correct.
should be to go pray for them. Sometimes I want to beat the snot out of them, even if I'm not capable of doing so. But I find those times that I do pray, it's not that immediately the steam is gone, the pain, the steam and the sting are gone.
Mhm.
It's not that. It's just that, okay, I'm going to take a while and just let God handle this instead of trying to handle it myself. I may
Mhm.
not feel immediately okay, but I can say this. It's here's a lot better for God to fight your battles than for you to fight them yourself.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
That's
pray
so.
for the critic. And who knows what that critic is going through? Who knows the pain? I had a friend who always said everybody's hurting somehow, some way.
Yeah.
And so keep that in mind.
Yeah. I have found that when someone's really passionate about something, and it comes off as a criticism, that ultimately there's something there's a pain point in there, and there's a reason why. And so anytime I've received criticism of the years, I try and get to the why behind it. One of the biggest questions I like to ask when someone has a criticism about something, I say, why is this important to you?
Mm.
Why is this important to you? Like, what is it about this particular part of church, of ministry, it's important to you? And so if you can get underneath that level of the why behind it, and does it start, I think, not disconnecting this with prayer, but when you begin to pray for that person, you're going to want to know why they feel that way. And so as you begin to pray for this person that's potentially criticizing you, you're going to find the why. Then you're going to be able to lead them a little bit better.
That's so
Um,
good. That is
yeah.
really
So,
good. Once you
what,
find the why, you actually may become one of their better encouragers,
mhm, yeah.
with the irony of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen so many situations where even if there's criticism between people in church life, and I've seen this happen as well. One, I encourage them to go talk to each other and to pray for each other, but two, to ask that question, why is this so important to you? Help me understand. Generally, don't go in with this, flip it like, why is this so important to you? It's more like help me understand. Like I want to know why this is an issue, and let's get to the bottom of this. And usually there's a good solution. I want to go down just another quick path real fast with this. Pray for the critic. What if you don't know who the critic is? What if you get an anonymous letter? How do you address that side of it?
Well, again, you pray for the critic because God knows who it is.
Sure.
So you still pray for the critic. Uh, Beyond that, Jess, I don't do a whole lot. I was not one of these people that ask my those like assistants and others to tear up the anonymous stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do.
Mm-hmm.
They said it doesn't even warrant looking at it. I understand that's a good point. I'd look at it, but I sure would put criticism and anonymity in a very, very small part of my mind. I mean, I would not focus on it. Someone that does not have the courage to put their name behind it is probably someone who's not really convinced and committed that he or she is doing the right thing anyway.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I
I
don't worry
yeah.
about it.
Same. I typically read it, but then I throw it away.
Yep. I've got two anonymous emails. They are still in my file today, printed out, because they're so good just to use as illustrations. I said, I want you to listen to this. This is really great.
That's yeah. I have not kept any over the years, but yeah, I typically take a moment and read it. No matter what criticism is, there's always a potential for growth. But we'll talk about it here in a minute. Let's look at our third way. So we're talking about 7 ways you can develop thicker skin in ministry. This is like, how do you prepare yourself to receive criticism? Don't take it personally. It's usually not meant to be personal. Sometimes it is, but it's usually not. First response then is to pray for the critic. Then this is like your side of it. How do you respond to it now? It's develop a winsome spirit. Defensiveness and bitterness never help. Learn to laugh at yourself. Have a joyous spirit. Rejoice the Lord always. So how do you do this? Because when you receive criticism, it's easy to let that internalize and start turning to bitterness. How do you, obviously, power of the Holy Spirit through prayer, but how do you begin to make this criticism an opportunity to lead well with a positive attitude?
you do this before the criticism comes. And what I'm saying is,
Okay.
you don't develop a winsome spirit only for criticism. You develop a winsome spirit for leadership. You develop a winsome spirit for relationships. You develop a winsome spirit for all that you do, and therefore it becomes somewhat of a default position even when the criticism comes.
Mm,
If you're only going to get happy and smile somewhat fake when the criticism comes, that's not the genuine thing. But if you have a winsome spirit in general, and those principles you mentioned, uh, defensiveness is not a winsome spirit. Bitterness is not a winsome spirit. Laughing at yourself is. And one thing I love about all of you three boys, y'all have always laughed at yourself. Not necessarily in a harmful, self-deprecating way, but in a way that you can say, I don't have all the answers. And
mhm.
so I'm going to laugh at myself. And when you get the critic comes in and you have that winsome spirit, uh, it's happened over weeks, months, maybe even years. And so it becomes more natural rather than, okay, here is my quick response to a critic.
Right. Yeah, that maintaining that posture of joy, I think for any level of leadership is really really important. Having that just underlying. Again, I say posture of joy because I don't believe it's an emotion. I believe it's a choice. It's a posture to choose joy. I think that is really really important. That's going to be contagious. That's gonna infiltrate and go throughout other leaders in the church. And that's an important part of church life is being contagious. Um, in fact, one of the most important parts of church life is being contagious into the community and reaching your community. And so we take just a break here, and I want to just remind those who are listening of one of our awesome partners who helps you do that. It is Upward Sports. They are all about helping you reach the community.
Upward Sports has been around a long time. Upward Sports was around when I was a pastor. I have stories about that I could have done a lot more with them. But my main point is this: they know what they're doing it well, and they might be, let's just put them in the top rankings of the top 5 or 6 outreach ministries for local churches in America today.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, they're powerful. I was recently doing a webinar for Upward, and I told them the story about interviewing 2 people that were on this podcast when you were on vacation, Jess, and they were pastors of evangelistic churches. And what I found out during the interview, and I said this earlier, that they both had Upward today, and they've had it for a long time. It's a part of their outward facing ministry. So absolutely love it. Love Upward. Thankful for what they're doing. And they're doing a lot more every single day.
Yeah, yeah. Upward's going to be one of those that just comes alongside you and supports you and encourages you. They're not ones that you need to develop a thicker skin with.
Yes.
They're going to be the ones that really really help you out in so many different ways. But that brings us back to what we're talking about today: 7 ways you can develop thicker skin. It's really just being prepared to respond to criticism because it is going to happen.
Mhm.
You are going to receive criticism if you're leading a church. It's bound to happen. And so far, we've talked about try not to take it personally. Most things aren't necessarily about you or your character. Pray for the critic. And then our third one was developing a winsome spirit, having that posture of joy. Our fourth way that you can develop thicker skin to be better prepared for criticism is to be a transparent leader. Explain that one. What does that look like?
There are 2 sides to this, not the coin, because that would indicate they're 2 sides of the same coin, but there are 2 sides to this. If you're a transparent leader, there will be greater trust. If there's greater trust, even when there is a criticism of you, they're going to trust that you will handle their criticism well, and therefore they will be in a better spirit to listen to you as you explain it. So that's one side of it.
Okay.
The other side is not being a transparent leader. The default for those who are now criticizing leaders who are not transparent is that they don't trust that person.
Hmm.
They don't know what's behind it. I knew of a pastor who refused to let hardly anybody see the giving records of the church, or didn't want, not the giving records of individuals, but the giving record of the church as a whole, and just was not transparent with the numbers on that. People did not trust him, and so when there was a criticism, they came at him with the default position: "We know you're wrong because we know that you're not transparent in other things."
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. So I mean that kind of brings up a good question. You gave one example of what it means to be a transparent leader. Being transparent with the finances. How else, would a pastor or church leader be transparent?
Be transparent about your own decisions. Be willing to say, I made a mistake.
Okay.
Be willing to say this wasn't the best decision.
Hmm.
Be willing to apologize to the church if it's necessary. That would be rare, but
Right.
be willing to do that. But be willing to just say, I don't have it all together, and we're going to go through this together. That kind of transparency goes a long way. And again, I brag on my three sons, but I see that in all three of you.
Yeah. So it sounds like that's coupled a lot with humility.
It is.
And so to be transparent, there also has to be some humility. And I think humility goes a long way. Yeah, admitting when you're wrong, admitting when that probably wasn't the best way of doing it. In fact, I had an instance recently here in my church life that I kind of look back, like, yeah, we probably should have gone with a different approach than what was done. And it wasn't out of any bad intent. It was just more of not thought through a whole situation. And so I've said to a few people recently, I was like, yeah, I think next time I'm gonna do that a different way. And I think it's just a small way of saying, yeah, it wasn't the best way, and you're being transparent. You're not, hiding anything or defending yourself. It's just going, what, we can learn from this. This
That's
was,
right.
I use a lot, like, this is the learning moment. And that thing helps other leaders kind of trust you in that. And so too, I think kind of coupling with that is just having an open door policy. Talk about
Mhm.
being transparent, being when someone's wanting to talk with them, and being willing to engage with them, and kind of that openness there. That was our fourth way to develop thicker skin, to be able to respond to criticism, as being transparent. The fifth one is, I guess, kind of tying into this idea of humility. The fifth one is pray for your own attitude. You will not only deal with ministry more effectively and godly, but you also develop thicker skin for dealing with criticisms.
Think of the admonition. There are all kind of admonitions about what it means to be like Jesus. My favorite though is Philippians 2.
Mm-hmm.
And
One of my
where he
favorite.
says, okay, what's it like to be like Jesus? Well, he put everybody before himself.
Yeah.
He decided to sacrifice his life, even death upon a cross, for the sins of many.
Mm-hmm.
And he did nothing wrong, unlike the rest of us leaders.
Right.
He did nothing wrong. And so why should I not have his attitude, which was just an attitude of joy, self not self-serving, other serving.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's an attitude that says, I am not here to boast. I am not here to have hubris. I am here for the good of others and for my God.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you know what? Criticisms are going to take a very small spot in your mind share and in your emotions.
Yeah. I have to say, this is not something I do often as we're talking through this. Like, how often do I pray for my own attitude? Um, I self-analyze, I determine my attitude. I'll admit when I have a bad attitude, but I don't. It's something that probably a practice that I should implement a little bit more, is actually taking time in my prayer life to pray for my attitude. And that it's Philippians 2:5-11. It's just an amazing passage. It starts off by saying, make your own attitude like that of Christ Jesus.
Okay, now what do I do? Yes.
Yeah. And then boom, it just lays out exactly what Jesus did for us, even from setting aside his glory to taking on, the likeness of man, dying a death he shouldn't die, ultimately that he will be exalted above all else. And so when you think of it that way, you need to pray for your own attitude. And so even for me, this is like, yeah, I need to do that a little bit more as well, to pray for our own attitude. So
Just a word about my practice on that, which is just one way to do it, not the way. I've shared many times that I tend to be checklist oriented.
mm-hmm.
I'm very task driven, functional type of person. And I used to fight that in prayer because I'd
Mm-hmm.
be praying, I'd be thinking about, I got to get this done. I've turned my prayer time into, okay, I'm just going to go down the list and really pray for them. And
Yeah.
as I've mentioned many times, I use an app
Mm-hmm.
to do so. And one thing on that app is attitude.
Okay.
So I just get there. It says, pray for my attitude. By the way, this is the most recent one I've added. I bet you don't even know that name.
I don't.
Mike Glenn's granddaughter.
Okay.
She has a rare disease called SOTUS.
Okay.
And what that means is she's never going to walk, hardly can communicate. Mind is fine, but it's. I think he said in early stages is giantism, that she will be so big, and then finally she'll grow into her body. But by that time, things are all messed up. Anyway, he showed me
Oh, man.
pictures of her. I said, Mike, I knew that you had a disabled granddaughter. I didn't know the details of it. So right there.
Hmm.
I put it on. He said, "Are you going to put me on there?" I said, "No." He
I
said,
can pray for you. I'm gonna pray for
I'll
your
pray for you
grandson.
every now and then, but I can't let this list get so big that I'm not really praying for people."
Hmm. Wow, that is powerful. Well, yeah, that again, you're seeing some themes throughout this when it comes to criticism. Prayer is a must.
Yeah.
Praying for the critic, praying for you, praying for your attitude, praying for your leadership. That is definitely a common thread. That was our fifth one, though. Praying for your attitude. Our sixth way that you can be prepared for criticism in ministry is to focus on the majority. And this was kind of mentioned a little bit earlier. I guess I should have tied the two together a little bit. Focus on the majority. The minority critics seem so loud that we get the impression that almost everyone is against us.
Jess, someone walked into my office when I was president of Lifeway and hit me with a pretty hard piece of criticism. Someone that had the ability to just walk into the office and not be screened in any way. And I listened and I said, "How pervasive is this that you're saying about me?" Very pervasive. People are really saying about it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Okay, I'm gonna need you to give me 3 or 4 of the names,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna go directly to them, and then we'll go more. 3 or 4. It's him and one other."
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I just had a coaching call with our certification in church revitalization. And I was talking with a younger pastor down in Arkansas, and he actually brought this topic up. And we had mentioned this before in a podcast about, what do you do when someone walks up to you and says, people are saying, and this, it obviously fits here again when we're talking about criticism, and it was that whole mindset of, well, who are the people, because we need to go have a conversation with them, like,
It's the only biblical way to do it.
yeah,
Well, I can't say. Well, then you're not handling it biblically, and they aren't handling it biblically. If you
right,
really want to handle this biblically the way Jesus would, tell me who the people are.
yeah, or I would say those people need to come to me,
Yep.
and if you're at that liberty to say, then you're speaking out of turn as well.
You become a gossiper.
That's it. And so if you don't have permission to say, then you're saying something you shouldn't be saying. Or if they've given you permission, then they actually need to go and biblically they need to go talk. So the idea, though, is to not let the perceived criticism be bigger than what it is. And typically it is small. And again, there's
They're exceptions.
examples that are outside of these parameters. And so we're not saying this is the end all be all, but generally speaking, when you receive criticism, it's coming from a person or maybe just two people. It's usually a small group or small percentage. The majority are going to be focused on the bigger picture at most of the time.
Right. This last one, I think we've referred to this many times
Yeah.
during this podcast. Hey, just look in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, hey, guess what? When you're being criticized and you're mad at that critic, here's what I tell myself: Hey, Tom, you're not so great yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, except for the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, ain't nothing, to
Yeah.
put it in a very biblical, succinct form. So look in the mirror.
I will have said that times I've received criticism and when it stings a lot, um, it's probably because there's a little bit of truth behind it. And so it's really, really difficult. It's really difficult to take criticism and take maybe the one tiny little part that's true and be like, okay, yeah, I do need to work on that. And taking that out and utilizing that for future growth. But being able to deal with the other part as it should be dealt with. But it takes a little bit of, like, to develop thicker skin, you got to be willing to look in the mirror a little bit, admit you're wrong, and to grow from that.
This is a big issue for improvement in ministry because every single leader will deal with this. Every single pastor will deal with this. And talk about improvement in ministry. If you want the best for your church in finance and to improve your ministry, to
Yep.
take that burden off of you and to put that with one of the most capable organizations in the world, that is Cheney and Associates, Jess.
It is, yeah. They're doing such great work. They're working with a lot of different churches, a lot of different sizes, and so don't think, just because you're too big or too small, don't think that you can't utilize Cheney and Associates. Go check them out. They again, as I mentioned at the beginning, they have this heart that they want to take the stress off of finances, off of bookkeeping, off of accounting, so that you can focus on ministry. In fact, they're through their ministry of working through finances, they're going to support you. They're going to give you real time information. They're going to give you accurate information. They're going to help you make better decisions as a church leader. That's one of the things they're very, very specialized in, is giving fast, accurate information so that you can be the best leader for your church. And so go check out Cheney Associates. Go to CheneyAssociates.com/church answers. Go get a discovery call with them. They're one of our partners here at Church Answers. We love what they're doing. We love their work. So go check them out. Well, Dad, this one's been a good one. Seven ways you can develop thicker skin in ministry. This is going to be something that I think is really important. It was a good reminder for me as well. But there are those pain points. There are those tough things. In fact, I think that sounds like a great next episode, is to talking about some
Let's maybe
pain
cover
points.
5 of the greatest pain points of pastors in a future podcast,
That
maybe
sounds
this
good.
week.
So if you're listening to this one, go wait or go see if the next one's available. If not, it'll be coming out soon. And we look forward to seeing you on the next Church Answers podcast.